on the internet. I am not finished yet. This is all part of the plan. We about to get digital rich. Digital rich. Digital.
Welcome back to the Industry Babies. This is episode 2 of our new show on the Ball Institute Network, where we talk with guests every episode on their field, on sports, so that we can grab some knowledge from people in the field. If you want to join the Ball Institute Discord for under $1 a day, you can get all our NFL bets throughout the season, as well as other sports, as well as first notifications when our YouTube videos goes up, which are obviously free as well. But for today, our guest is Chris Cotillo, Boston Red Sox beat writer, and someone I've known for a while and just haven't talked in a while. So we're long overdue for this little 30-minute session. Chris, how are we doing?
That's right. Good. How are you?
Not too bad. I was in Chris's sports writing and journalism workshop so many years ago now. It feels like an eternity. But Chris is always the man, always willing to talk some Red Sox with us. And we're in an interesting time for the Red Sox because it's been a roller coaster of emotions for the fans over the last year or so, arguably a couple of years. And a lot of the people who watch our shows are not Red Sox fans. But at this point, given how dramatic the year has been, feels like even the non-Red Sox fans are really, really tapped into the Red Sox these days for some obvious reasons we'll talk about. But yeah, I just want to start with what were your expectations? Obviously, you have close connections, within the team as a beat writer. I know something you've told me in the past is I'm there to do a job and be unbiased about the Red Sox. And I'm often rooting for just the game to happen and then me do my job and go back home. I'm not even rooting for the team at some point. So you're closely connected to the inside happenings of the Red Sox. So sort of what were your expectations for the Red Sox coming into the season from the lens of the organization? Because certainly they've lived up to some of my expectations, but not the others. So what were your expectations coming into the year? What were the goals for the team?
Yeah, I mean, I think, relevance again, being in the playoff picture, all that stuff that, we can sit here on September 15th that has come to fruition. I think it's been kind of right about where I thought they'd be standings wise in a wild card spot, fighting for that spot down the stretch in a tight race. I will say, I think, the way they got here was way, way different than anybody, could have imagined. They identified this year, I think, as a year where they would go, not necessarily all in, where they were going to trade, their future prospects, but where the timelines were aligning, where they had money to spend. They obviously got Crochet and Bregman, paid them both, Crochet in a trade and the extension, Bregman a big free agent contract, and then had that kind of align with the timelines of their top prospects coming up, whether it be, first Christian Campbell and then Marcelo Meyer and then Roman Anthony. And we've seen, the pitchers the last couple of weeks and Tolley and Early. Obviously, when the season started, you would have expected Rafael-Devers to be part of it at this point and a big part of it. And you would have expected, maybe Tristan Casas to have a big year or Jarren Duran to have a better year than he has after a good one last year. Or, Tanner Houck, to not need Tommy John. There's just a lot of things that have happened that if you had talked about them kind of in a vacuum, it would have been surprising that they would have won this many games. But Giolito stepped up and Bayo stepped up. Aroldis Chapman's been unbelievably good. Garrett Whitlock right behind him. Crochet's a Cy Young candidate. Trevor Story's had a good bounce back year. They've gotten enough production from different guys. So again, not linear, not the way you would have expected it to happen. I think a long and winding road to a point that I thought they would get to, but it's been a very, very, very eventful year.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned a couple of the things that I was sort of expecting coming into the year, and some of the things where, if you told me that was going to happen a few months ago, I'd be like, this is not the same Red Sox we're talking about. And I guess one of the storylines of the year has been Trevor Story's resurgence. And at the beginning of the year, there were fans who wanted him DFA'd, and the same goes for Ceddanne Rafaela, by the way. But we've talked so much about Ceddanne on our other show, on our baseball show, that people are going to be tired of me talking about Ceddanne Rafaela. Just what an enigma of a player he is. Mm-hmm. But Trevor Story's resurgence is one that is great to see, because I'm not surprised that he's still a good player. There was a lot of swing and miss early in the game, but I'm just happy for him. But were there any other surprises, like roster wise, with whether it be like people who are already on the roster or whatnot? Because I have some names in mind, such as like Romy Gonzalez has been a pleasant surprise. And if you take out like the span of like 1 month or so, like right after the All-Star break, where he was kind of cold, like he's not just been one of the best like lefty pitcher platoon bats in the league over the course of the season, but he's also been solid against right-handed pitching, which like is a complete pleasant surprise to me. And it's kind of like the bandage to the offense sometimes, especially with you trade your best hitter in Devers, which we'll talk about, and you also lose your second best hitter in Roman Anthony to injury. And I don't know if this is if I'm accurate in saying this, but Alex Bregman looks like he's not 100% healthy. I mean, he said when he was coming back that, I got to play, like I'm going to play through whatever issues that I have. He doesn't look 100% healthy. Since his return, he hasn't been the bat he was before he got hurt. So you kind of are losing 2.5 hitters of your best 3, you could argue. And then Romy Gonzalez has been one of those bandages. And then Nathaniel Lowe also like a really good move. But we've talked about that one. So were there any other surprises to you on this roster?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's guys that have done a good job of having a really good month and kind of patching the holes. To me, like even a guy like Abraham Toro, when he first came up, was getting a lot of hits in the wake of Casas' injury. Refsnyder and Romy Gonzalez against lefties are very, very good, as everybody knows. So they can give you really good performances against lefties. We saw one last week in Sacramento with Jeffrey Springs. Narvaez had a really good first half. I think the wear and tear has got to him. He's been better the last couple weeks and homered again last night. Rafaela carried them in early July, was super hot, has been bad at the plate, before and after that. Duran had a really good July. So it's a lot of guys who have had, good stretches to carry the team. They have not, as an offense, I think, clicked all together because you probably wouldn't expect that, some of these guys would have prolonged success outside of the Bregmans of the world and Roman Anthony. I think, Roman really catalyzed the offense for most of the second half, especially when he moved to the leadoff spot. He's not a part of it right now. And I think as we head into these final couple weeks and then eventually the playoffs, if they get there, I think, the offense could be a big issue, where you look at, there's a lot of guys that you need good performances from. And, with Bregman scuffling a little bit, Trevor Story still has a lot of swing and miss in his game. Anthony not part of it. We talked about the other guys, Devers and Casas haven't been part of it for a long time. And Devers won't be, obviously, ever again here. They do need some guys to step up, whether that be Romy getting hot against a lefty or Duran changing the game with speed or, whoever. They need somebody to step up because runs have been hard to come by, not in the first inning last night, but generally since Anthony went down about 10 days ago.
And for some added context in the offense, I mean, it is very easy for me to remember the date Devers got traded because it was my birthday. So since June 15th, since that day, the Red Sox are number 14 in baseball in WRC plus as an offense. I mean, some of the regression can obviously be explained by the injuries like Roman Anthony and Alex Bregman. And obviously the trade is going to hurt a bit, but they've been held together by the likes of Trevor Story and company. But on the other side, the pitching has been a wild ride to me, and that's been more surprising to me than anything that they've done offensively this year, whether it be the good or the bad. So they get Dustin May from the Dodgers. It's the most recent thing, like, in our memory. But going back to, like, the beginning of the season, like, I certainly wasn't expecting Lucas Giolito to have such a hot stretch. Like, at this point, it's not even a hot stretch. He's just been good for a little bit. I mean, he just had a great start against the Yankees outside of the home run to Judge. Lucas Giolito has turned around his career nicely, and Brian Bayo had a rough year last year, and now he looks like a legitimate like number 2, number 3. And you go into what could be a playoff run where they play a wild card series. Again, nothing's locked up. In fact, after the recent losses, anything's but locked up. But if you go into a wild card series at this point, you feel pretty good about Garrett Crochet, but then also you kind of feel good about Lucas Giolito and Brian Bayo, which most of us were not necessarily expecting to be the case at the beginning of the season, to be like, yeah, you have a okay 1, 2, 3 punch. And that just summarizes that Andrew Bailey to me is just good. And it also brings me to, if Andrew Bailey can't fix the likes of Jordan Hicks or Dustin May, then we really need to have some talks in the offseason. But Andrew Bailey has turned around a lot of this pitching staff. Aroldis Chapman, like, I don't know the truth to the reports about, I mean, maybe you do, the truth to the report about Aroldis Chapman is finally good because he's aiming his fastball. I don't know if you want to speak on that, but
yeah, I find that one hard to believe. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I find that one hard to believe. It's Aaron Boone said it. I think that was more of a joke that got taken out of context than anything.
Yeah. I mean, speaking of that, I mean, Connor Wong has also had a really weird season, like one of the worst players in baseball in the first half of the season, and now he's kind of hot. So that's also another thing interesting. But I want to go get to the meat of the bone, which is like probably why most people are going to watch this podcast, which is the Devers trade. I mean, it ties into some of the things we brought up a few minutes ago. Tristan Casas gets hurt. I mean, that was supposed to be the everyday first baseman. If you want to watch our baseball specific segment, we've talked about in the past that I'm a believer in Tristan Casas, in that if he gets a full healthy season, I still think he can be a very good player, a well above average hitter. The defense always questionable, but I think he can be a very, very good hitter when healthy. But the injury opens up the fact that you have to platoon at first base because you have no answers. Then the report is that they try to get Devers to play first base because you want to get Devers bat in there every single day. But you also have Masataka Yoshida, who is at this point a DH, and basically some roster construction issues. And the outside lens of like the non-Red Sox people, the people who have no information about like what's happening in the clubhouse, etc., the outside look is like the Red Sox traded Devers for roster flexibility. That's basically what happened because they got back Jordan Hicks. They got back Kyle Harrison. I like Kyle Harrison, but we'll be honest that's not the trade package you trade because you really think that's a great return. That's not why the trade happened. They really felt that he was not going to prioritize roster flexibility and be a team player or whatnot. So can you give us some insight into what has actually happened? And also in that regard, like the future of Tristan Casas, like are the Red Sox determined to hold on to him? And does the Devers trade actually happening affect that?
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think it's a lot about just the way Devers was carrying on. Personally, it was a situation that the sides found to be untenable. He felt like they pulled one over on him, and they felt like he was being a bad teammate, and the tensions were really high. He was super stubborn about it. The meeting with John Henry didn't go well, and that's that. I think everybody was shocked when they made that trade. But, if you look back at the few months before and him feeling like they lied to him and them feeling like he wasn't doing, what he was being paid to do, be a good teammate and make sure the roster was in the best place it could be, I feel like they had no choice. I think a big part of it was them just wanting to kind of set the tone for Roman Anthony and Marcelo Meyer and Campbell and all these other young guys coming up and saying, like, we're an all-in group. We're going to be rowing in the same direction. We need to be kind of together in this. And to show them that in their mind was unacceptable behavior and an unacceptable way to handle the situation, I think was a bold stroke, obviously. A big one that I think Craig Breslow, put his legacy on the line for, maybe his job on the line. But he felt at the time like, hey, this guy is not being a team player and it's poisoning the well and we don't want him here. And we can get maybe a couple pitchers. Maybe there's other guys that can step up. I know that they've played well since that trade. It's hard for me to say the roster is a better one without Rafael-Devers in it. I think they are a more, not complete, but a better built team now because they can have different guys in the DH spot. When Anthony was healthy, obviously, the outfielders were. That was a big part of it. So a huge, like monumental kind of cornerstone moment. Definitely in the last few years for the Red Sox. Fans were pissed about it at first. The explanations they gave were not great as a team. That was a bad look for them that Rafi was immediately willing to go to San Francisco and play first base. I know he got off to a slow start. He's been hitting there. He's always going to do that. He's one of the better hitters in the game. It just got to a point where, both sides can be faulted. It was a messy divorce. That was number one. And I think, moving forward, looking forward, the only way you can really judge that trade is going to be how they spend the money that they got San Francisco to take on. The Roman Anthony extensions, kind of separate to me. It's like, who do you go get in the free agent market this year? Is there a big bat to replace Devers? Can you go sign another ace because you have that money available? They're the Red Sox. They should be able to keep Devers and do that stuff. I don't think it was a financially motivated trade at all. That's a conspiracy theory that's cool to talk about here. But, it really comes down to how they spend that money. And you can look at it, priority one was getting rid of Devers. Priority two was maybe freeing up that money. And priority three was whoever they got back in the deal. And so that's, kind of all gravy. And Kyle Harrison's 3 good innings the other day, hopefully for them, just the start of him being good.
And Dustin May has been, not related to the Devers trade, but Dustin May it kind of feels like an after effect of the Devers trade, because every move, every trade is going to get overly scrutinized, as they should be post the Devers trade. Dustin May's repertoire has looked a little different, so that's something to look forward to. But
he's never going to pitch for the Red Sox again, so it'll be something for somebody else to look forward to.
Yeah. But I'm just curious from an Andrew Bailey lens that if Andrew Bailey figured out something with Dustin May and now he goes and does it for someone else, then it's going to be interesting to watch. But long-term plans, I guess more following up on the Tristan Casas thing. Like Tristan Casas might be the most polarizing player on the opening day roster for the Red Sox this year. Like, there are people who love him. There are people who think he's a terrible, useless player. What side I'm on, but do you think the Red Sox, given the information you have, do you think the Red Sox view him as their franchise first baseman, or are they going to try to, like you said, like they're trying to build Devers in the aggregate, so to speak? I'll always throw a Moneyball reference when I can, but if they're trying to build this lineup in the aggregate, is Tristan Casas like an optional part of that, or are they determined to hold on to him? Because I don't seem to know based on whatever I see on Twitter.
Yeah, I think that he is the guy that was just a couple of years ago the top prospect, and a guy who came up and 2 years ago had a really good second half. Especially, there's still a lot of potential. What are you going to do? Trade him when his value is really low and he's coming off a catastrophic knee injury this winter? Probably not. I think at the same time, bringing back or going and finding some depth options there is important too. So I don't think that they are ready at this point to say, in large part because of the injury and the seriousness of tearing your patellar tendon, that he's going to be the guy come opening day next year and that they're going to turn it over and play him 162. And I think having a guy like Romy Gonzalez under control and on the roster is pretty valuable for that, to have him. He's playing a lot more now, obviously playing every day between first and second, to have him at least, face lefties in that position, or if not, get some starts while Casas is maybe working his way back slowly in April or May. I also think that there's room for, a veteran like Nathaniel Lowe to, you sign him to maybe a low value deal, see what he can give you. They're not going to tender him at $11 million or whatever he's due to make, but maybe try to re-sign him for a lower amount, bring him back and just say, all right, well, between these three guys, we'll figure something out and have that kind of problem figure itself out in camp. But these recoveries are not, linear. I think there's moments where Casas is going to be hesitant in spring training and in April. The recovery's actually gone pretty well and pretty smoothly, and he's walking around and, looks to be at a point where he can do everyday activities, which was there was no easy road even 4 months ago when it happened. So, but I think it's a big ask to turn it over to him and say, you're back to this 162 role, which he's never done anyway. This isn't the first time he's gotten hurt. You saw last year the torn rib cartilage and all that stuff. So definitely a guy I don't think they're going to give up on. He's definitely in a much different place than he was maybe a year ago heading into this season.
Tristan Casas, stands would love for me to clip that. They're not going to give up on him. We'll eat on that for the entire offseason. Heading into like what looks to be a pretty dogfighty of a wild card race. Like the Red Sox don't have anything locked up. They're only one game ahead of the Astros in that third wild card spot, and 3 games ahead of the Rangers, who are currently out of that wild card bubble. Nothing is locked up, and it might be that the last few games of the regular season still involve a wild card fight. Injuries are happening, both on the pitching side and the offensive side. They've kind of been happening for basically every team in contention, which makes this pennant kind of wide open. I don't think there's a single American League team where you can say like, yeah, they're going to win the pennant. I feel pretty good about that, more so than any other recent year. So this American League pennant being wide open kind of is always going to make Red Sox fans think like, yeah, you got to go for it. And I think like once you get in, anything can happen. But at the same time, you look at this roster with all the injuries and you're like, can this Red Sox team actually win multiple playoff series in a row? And something we were talking about on our baseball show, The Deep Drive, which was the Red Sox pitching staff. And Lucas Giolito having a good season out of nowhere was kind of like a complete wild card. That seems to be just like a free bone that Andrew Bailey's thrown us. I wasn't expecting that at all. Brian Bale, I still was expecting to be a good pitcher, but you have a 1-2-3 in a wild card series where you're like, yeah, you can win that series with those 3. But beyond those top 3 pitchers, the bullpen has question marks themselves. The bullpen has been outstanding for a huge chunk of the season. Justin Slayton was a guy who was very, very good at the start of the season. I kept talking about it just because I'm a big Justin Slayton guy. And then he gets hurt. I actually ran into him while getting a CT scan like a few months ago. I didn't even know he was coming back this season. He was just like, I'm a long way ahead, because I was talking to him. He's like, I'm a long way away from coming back. Now he's back. And obviously the role is different because he's not 100% where he was before the injury. Gale, believe he's given up a couple of home runs already, and his role is different now. He's no longer the bridge guy. Garrett Whitlock has that role now. And now you look at this, where this pitching staff stands. Greg Weissert is not someone that anybody will, trust with their life at this point. No one in this bullpen right now, you look at and be like, other than Aroldis Chapman, you can be like, yeah, I trust that guy right now. So it's a huge crowd of a lot of question marks. So do you have a tip on like where the Red Sox are focused on pitching wise entering this wild card race / potential playoffs, and who has the edge here other than potentially, obviously Chapman, but potentially Whitlock has this bridge role pretty on lock. But besides that, do you have any idea where this pitching staff is going?
Yeah, I mean, I think you got to ride the top 3 starters and the 2 top relievers and see how many innings they can give you in a short series. If you can get Crochet to give you 7 and go to Whitlock and Chapman, if you can get Bayo to give you 6 or Giolito to give you 6, and then figure it out from, Whitlock, who's been absolutely phenomenal for like 3 months, and then Chapman, that's it. I mean, that's really what they have. And then behind those guys are a lot of question marks. Steven Matz and Justin Wilson, 2 experienced guys who have been around for a long time, can be probably trusted against lefties. Wilson's been pretty good all year. Right-handed wise, it is kind of a mess. Slayton has looked horrible. His ERA is like 12 since he came back. He's a guy I think they really expected to step up and be that 7th, 8th inning guy. He was a candidate, and him and Chapman were kind of flip-flopping and getting saves on different days because they like certain pockets and matchups. Weissert, a guy, tough to trust. Zach Kelly's got really good stuff, but, he's up and down and has been this year, not just from a performance standpoint, but also up, down AAA. So, there's guys, they need somebody to step up. I think, the interesting thing is that they're calling up, all of these different arms from AAA, the 3 lefties, Tolley, Connolly, Early, and Harrison, who we talked about. David Sandlin's down there. How much do you want to throw on a young guy's plate? I mean, Harrison has 200 innings in the big leagues, but Tolley has now 3 starts, including 2 really short ones. And Connolly Early was dominant against the A's the other day. They'll face them again tomorrow, but he only has 5 innings in the big leagues under his belt. So they are in a really tenuous position. I think when you look at the roster 1 through 26, there are like 10 guys who are the absolute core who are good. Beyond that, there's a lot of, uncertainty across the roster, whether you talk about some of the guys in the bullpen we just mentioned, or, the guys like Nate Eaton and Nick Sogard and David Hamilton, any of these guys that are on the team right now, they can't, God forbid for them, anybody else gets hurt in that mix of that top 10. They can't have like slippage in performance. Like they can't have a bad start from Bayo, because like who's going to cover those innings, right, in the playoffs? And do you trust Connolly early with 3 big league starts under his belt to pitch a playoff game for you? I know teams have done it. It's just I think people also forget like how decimated the pitching staff is from a depth perspective. They had so much depth coming out of spring training. They traded Quinn Priester, and he's been really good for Milwaukee. But Hunter Dobbins tore his ACL. Cutter Crawford didn't pitch all year due to 2 different injuries and setbacks. Patrick Sandoval never came back from Tommy John, Tommy John, as we talked about. And now Richard Fitz is probably not coming back this year with neuritis in his arm. May and Hicks were both struggling. Then they're now out. Brendan Bernardino has a lat strain, probably not going to contribute. He's a guy that's given them a lot of outs, throughout the year. The list goes on and on and on. Cooper Criswell, a guy who would probably be making starts right now on the IL at AAA. Think about Liam Hendricks has given them 12 bad innings this year, and for a guy they expected to potentially be in the closer mix. And Josh Winkowski hasn't contributed all year. It's really a long list. And so they're at a point where they're using these kids that they probably didn't want to use at this point. It's kind of cool in a way that they get thrown right into the fire and they get this test in the middle of the playoff race. But also it's like you saw in Arizona and in Sacramento, Peyton Toley's last 2 outings. Well, you could see all the upside in the first one, but you can also see that he's a guy that started this year in high A and early as a kid who, has not been pitching that long in the minors too. So they are on, I think, really thin ice when it comes to the staff. If Giolito or Bayo or Crochet or Chapman or Whitlock were to get hurt, I mean, the deck of cards collapses super, super fast. Luckily for the Red Sox, all 5 of those guys have been, very healthy and very good for a long time. But like, who's the 6th best pitcher on the staff right now? And that could it be Connolly Early and Peyton Toley after 1 start? Like it's a very, very, very tenuous situation. You even see last night they need Steven Matz to cover an inning up 3, and Caballero hit one that hasn't come down yet. So it speaks to, I think, the weak trade deadline Breslow had. Matz has been okay. May has been terrible. And I think, it's about who's taking these roster spots now. And it's going to be a lot of guys in inflated roles you wouldn't have expected if they do make it to October.
I think I did not truly realize the entire year, like how many injuries the Red Sox have dealt with until you just named all of them.
Right.
And that kind of highlights
every team does with the pitching staff, right? Like that's just the name of the game now.
Yeah.
But it's kind of, even to me, just more impressive they're at the point they are where you've literally Cutter Crawford led the team in innings last year and has not thrown a pitch at any level this year. Houck was an all-star last year and was projected to be your number 2. He started the second game of the season. He had like an 8 ERA in 12 starts or whatever it was, 7 starts. And I think it was, like 7 or 8 starts. Tommy John. They expected big things out of, Fitz and Dobbins, who were both on the IL. So it's been a lot, definitely. And they're short. That's why they're calling for everybody who can throw hard in Worcester's getting called up, and to mixed results so far.
I think I saw a tweet. I forget who it was by, but the comparing Peyton Toley's call up and how he started the year at high A and how he could contribute in this wild card race and be a part of a wild card series roster. Like they were comparing that and the potential there to David Price as like the most recent rookie to have an impact in a playoff series to the extent that
they did it with the White Sox in 2020, I think.
Yeah, but it just like goes to show like it's rarer than people realize. Like
right.
The fact that we have to go back to like Crochet or David Price as the most recent examples of those being success stories. Like it's scary. And I'll say this as well. Like you mentioned, Devers with the Giants. Like the Giants are 1.5 games behind a playoff spot. I'm not usually one to worry about what other teams are doing, but in a season that is pretty wide open, like you will have a lot of tweets in your mentions asking you questions, and you'll have to see a lot of stuff on Twitter if the Red Sox blow this playoff spot and the Giants do make it. But it'll make for a more adventurous offseason regardless anyway. Mm-hmm. As usual, for those watching, like if you're watching on YouTube, you can join us for these live streams and join us in the Discord for notifications on when those happen. Today we were joined by Chris Cotillo. Chris, anything you want to plug before I free you?
Just MassLive.com and the Fenway Rundown podcast. That's where to get all the latest on your Boston Red Sox. And
at Chris Cotillo on Twitter. Chris, thank you so much for your time today. I'm sure we'll talk later, maybe in the offseason when the Red Sox are actually making some moves of that provide some hope for the team having a direction. But Chris, thank you so much for joining today, and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good, man. Thanks a lot.
My name ringing bells on the internet. I am not finished yet. This is all part of the plan. We about to get digital rich.